Hello, I'm Robert, and this is a short version of my videos. I'm going to talk a lot more in some detail in videos for those who like it, but the short version is just that this planet Nibiru is just nonsense. There's nothing to it at all. Now, some of you have been saying, how can it be nonsense, because it seems so real, because they go into so much detail. Well, the people who have got very strong imaginations. Could you write Harry Potter? So, I know I couldn't. So there's some people who've got very vivid imaginations and very good at writing fiction. And then there are other people who have very strong imagination who come to believe these things. And these people writing about Nibiru, it's a little bit like you wrote a story about Harry Potter, and then you wrote it in such a convincing way that you came to believe yourself that there is such a place as Hogwarts, and you wrote your application to become a wizard at Hogwarts because you've come to believe your own imagination. So all these details and things, that's not too surprising at all. People can come to believe all sorts of things. Some people come to believe that they are Napoleon, or they are Queen Nefertiti, and they really and truly and sincerely believe this. So, and they can be very convincing, and they build up all sorts of elaborate details as to why they are Napoleon. Despite everyone else saying he died so many centuries ago, they know for sure that they are Napoleon. So that's just the way some people think. So anyway, don't just feel that because something is written in a very vivid fashion that it has to be real. So I'm going to talk in some detail as to how you can actually look at it, and how you can test these things for yourself, and there are ways you can do that, and how you can kind of go behind the imaginative writing to find out if what they're writing is actually true. And basically, it's a matter of checking sources. So, for instance, if someone says in their story that so-and-so was murdered, and they talk about a real person, and you go and look at their obituary, and you find they died of throat cancer, then for most people, an obituary in a published newspaper, that's the end of the story. That's what actually happened, because journalists have to be very careful when they write the obituaries to make sure they're accurate. And so even with just that basic application, that very basic application of sources, you can find out for yourself that a lot of the things, you can just follow up the things that these people say, and they are wrong. Now, when someone writes things, and they can make a few mistakes, humans always make mistakes from time to time, but if every single thing they say is wrong like that, then it's rational not to trust them. And then if everything that you follow up, like the astronomer Phil Plait, astrophysicist Phil Plait, and everything I followed up, when I followed it up, he always says exactly what the sources say. So I trust him. Rational trust. That's rational trust and rational distrust. And so in that sense, if you're an ordinary person can follow up these Nibiru things, you can check for yourself. You don't even need to know any science. You can just find out for yourself that the things that they say are just not backed up by sources that are reliable. And they actually say the opposite of what they said quite often. And then the astronomy is just plain silly. But you need to have a little bit of understanding of astronomy to see that. So I'm going to talk about that in much more detail in a couple of videos on this, and then I'll talk a little bit about the things in the article. And I just thought maybe it helps talking visually. You can actually see me and hear me speak rather than just the text. And then I'll talk a little bit about myself and how I know all this stuff, because this is one of the things I kept being asked. I kept being asked, am I just making this all up in order to reassure you? And I assure you I'm not. I mean, it's not the sort of thing that'd be totally silly anyway, because if there was something coming our way, everybody would know about it. So I'm going to talk about that in a separate video as to why it is that if there was an asteroid coming our way, why we would all know about it long in advance. Because to start with, you would be just kind of vague probability, a low probability, 1 in a million chance, and then as they refine the orbit, it would get more and more probable if they ever did find something headed our way. and they're not all the countries all around the world. There's no way that's going to be hidden from us. It makes a nice movie script, but it's not at all realistic. And what else? Talk a little bit about me as a person. So I was, as you can see, I'm 61 now. I was 15 at the time that the Apollo landed on the moon. I was already very keen on science before then and on astronomy. And we had there's Patrick Moore. I don't know if you've heard about Patrick Moore. Anyone who's keen on astronomy most astronomers in the UK have probably been influenced by him at some point in their life. It's amazing how many professional astronomers have become professional astronomers because they, as young children, they listened to Patrick Moore explaining about astronomy on the television once a month. I think it was the longest running programme by a single presenter throughout his entire life. And he's an amateur astronomer. He was best known for his drawings of the moon. He did very accurate drawings of the moon, which were so accurate because back in those days they didn't have the good cameras that we have nowadays, and we were very reliant on good astronomers just using their eyesight and moments of clear seeing, drawing details of the moon's craters and things. And when the Apollo astronauts landed on the moon, they actually used Patrick Moore's map of the moon, which he was very proud of that, of course. He was very keen on the moon. He was also very eccentric. He believed that the craters were volcanoes until quite late in his life, until then definitely disproved. And right until he died, he was very sceptical about the idea of water in the moon. Some of the very strong opinions, but he reported the science as it was, and he didn't push over his opinions to anyone else. And he was a great chap, very eccentric, very much loved by the science community and by the general public, and here in the UK. So that was my influence as I was growing up in astronomy. And I did a degree in mathematics, got a first class degree in mathematics from York University, and so for me all the mathematics is very easy. I also did the postgraduate degree. I worked on postgraduate. I did postgraduate research. I didn't actually get it, but I did the postgraduate research, and and that got me into the nitty-gritty of checking your sources and working with sources and so on. So part of what I'm saying is drawing on what I learned from my supervisor and things, and working through with my degree and how you check your sources and so on, which any academic who works postgraduate learns this stuff. And and recently I started science blogging just a few years back, and mainly I'm interested in planetary protection issues. That is actually the main reason I started science blogging, because I felt that there wasn't being enough attention being given to the issues of the possibility of introducing life from Earth to Mars by mistake, and so messing up all our scientific research there, or accidentally bringing life from Mars back to Earth if we return a sample here. So I felt that there's lots written about it, but it wasn't being reported in the news. And lots of science and philosophical articles about that, but very little journalism. So that's why I started science blogging, and when I found out that there was a big hoo-ha in Wikipedia, where these people were it gets very political in some areas of Wikipedia, and these people are very keen on colonisation, really didn't like having material there in the articles talking about these issues of introducing life to Mars, because of course humans landing on Mars would bring life to Mars, and they could mess everything up for the scientists. So I found I couldn't write freely in Wikipedia, which I'd been doing before, so I came and started writing science blogs instead. Blog posts instead about the same things, and that got a lot of attention and interest, and so it came on from there. I write about my music software and all sorts of things. The reason I got talking about Nibiru is because I've started blogging about asteroid impacts and the search for asteroids, and the reason why we can be sure that we're not going to be hit by a 10-kilometre asteroid by next month, because we've already mapped them all. Not many people know this, but we have mapped out every single 10-kilometre asteroid right out to the outer edge of the asteroid belt. So there's no way it's going to suddenly hit us, a 10 or something that big. Now, a 1-kilometre asteroid, that's rather smaller, it could hit us with rather little warning, a few weeks warning, because we haven't finished mapping them all out yet. If they're in very tricky orbits, like behind the sun when we were looking, kind of a thing, but they can't be stay behind the sun very long. That's one of the things about Nibiru, why it's so silly. But something as tiny as 10 kilometres, by the size of New York, well, that we can see all the way out to the asteroid belt. Something as tiny as 1 kilometre, well, we haven't quite found them all yet. But we should find them all by the 2020s. We're nearly there. And then once we found all of those, or we'll find 99% by then anyway, once we found all those, then we'll just be left with ones that are beyond Jupiter. If they're beyond Jupiter, it's going to take them quite a while to get to the vicinity of the Earth. So I can't say absolutely that we won't be hit by 1 kilometre asteroid, but the chance is really, really tiny. So if you think about that, if you go back to all of recorded history, there's never ever been an example of a city or a village or anything like that being hit by an asteroid. So it does happen from time to time, and we've found some examples in deserts, but the humans are more spread out on the Earth now, so there's more chance of it happening. But there are much more of the really tiny ones than of the big ones. It's not very likely we're going to be hit by 1 kilometre asteroid, because they're very, very rare. It's much more likely we'll be hit by one the size of the one that for the Russian meteorite. That's about the size that we're most likely to be the first one that we're going to predict accurately. And then when you get to the big 10 kilometre ones, there's the size of the ones that the one that led the dinosaurs to be extinct. Well, we already know that we're not going to be hit one in the near future because we'd have found it by now. But we might be hit by one a few years from now. Now, most people, if you're asked to guess what the chance of that is, then they will say 50-50 or something like that. But I mean, if you look at past history, we haven't been hit by one. So why people think that we're suddenly going to be hit by one now, I have no idea. And then the dinosaurs were hit by one, but that was 66 million years ago. And they think that we're hit by them once every 100 million years, on average. So in any particular century, the chance is 1 in a million, not 50-50. The chance that we're hit by a really big asteroid in this century is 1 in a million. That's a tiny, tiny, tiny probability. And then, because we've found all of the ones out to Jupiter, then we can reduce that even more. And it's a 1 chance in 10 million now that we've done that, because we have already discovered that there isn't one going to hit us this century. So now we know the answer to that. So not of the nearby ones. So the only ones that are left, the ones that orbit, that cross Jupiter's orbit, and who are currently beyond Jupiter. So harder for us to spot. And so they're going to take quite a while to get here if any of them are headed our way. And the chance is absolutely minute that that's going to happen. And instead, they're focusing much more now on the 100-metre sized asteroids. So those are big enough to destroy a city or entire small country. So those are serious matters, but remember they are incredibly rare all the same. So please don't be lying scared and that they're going to be hit even by a 100-metre asteroid. And the one thing about asteroids is the one kind of thing that we can actually prevent. We can predict it to the minute. It's not like Nibiru, this silly nonsensical thing that's always coming and never gets here. If we were going to be hit by an asteroid, we would know to the minute, on the exact day and the minute on that day when it's going to happen. And what's more, so long as we can do lots of taking photographs and so on and do a nice big survey, then we will know in advance. Once they've finished all these surveys, then we should know at least several years in advance. And if they can find the funding to do really very sensitive surveys, and you're not talking about very much, you're talking about maybe £500 million. I mean, I know it's a lot of money, but compared to the amount that's spent on wars or nuclear weapons, it's tiny. And if all the Earth together could come together and spend £500,000 on sending a space telescope to orbit near Venus, then that would hugely reduce, and we would know even tiny asteroids. We would know long in advance where they're going to come to the Earth, where they're going to hit, and all that sort of thing. So it's a matter of priorities really, and finance. And I would tell people to just tell your politicians and so on, we should do this. I think it's absolutely daft that we're so engaged in spending billions of pounds on wars and on nuclear weapons that's never even used, and that are just destabilising in my view, and yet we don't spend hardly anything on asteroid defence. So once we've found them, they can actually be deflected as well. So it's the one natural disaster that we can predict accurately to the minute, and we can actually prevent as well. You can't prevent an earthquake. At least so far we don't know of any way of preventing an earthquake or volcanic eruption. Most you can do is try to predict it. You can't prevent asteroid impacts. And if you've got a prediction, say 20 years in advance of a 10-kilometre asteroid, even one as big as that, you would be able to divert it so it doesn't hit the Earth. You just need to give it a little shove, tiny little shove, just a little push, not even as fast as that. Just a tiny little shove like that. If you get it moving just very, very slightly, then over 10 years that becomes a huge distance, and it'll miss the Earth easily. So people are far, I do think far too much is made of this idea of a big impact. So, and the idea of a planet-sized impact or a planet-sized flyby, I mean, it's just not possible. So anyway, I'm going to talk a little bit more about, that's enough maybe on the asteroids. I was going to say that at the end, but I've now gone and said it now. So you can go and read my article about that and ask me questions about that. But the rest will be on Nibiru. It is just totally silly stuff, but I will explain to you how you can decide that for yourself. And please don't get scared about this. I mean, honestly, it's like being scared. To give the example of a hungry pumpkin. You know, it's like being scared that the big hungry pumpkin is going to eat the Earth next December. You know, please don't get yourself worked up about such a silly thing. And there are much more sensible things to be concerned about. And then there's also, as Ringu Tulku, I posted that video just now, and I hope some of you may have found it helpful. So it's the idea that when you're scared about something, then this becomes your priority to try and fix it. And then what can you do? Just read lots and lots of stories, get more and more worked up by these stories that you've read, and trying to sort it all out. This becomes your big project to try and solve this issue. Then if you once you've solved that, if you do manage to, and obviously it will be solved for all of us in next April or December or whatever, until the next scare comes along. But once you've solved that, you'll just find another thing that will take its place. And so if you can manage to, not just with Nibiru, which I hopefully will be able to see as completely silly, but just generally when you have these things that seem to be huge problems in your life, if you can learn to just move in another direction and look at things that are positive and things that are good, because you're always going to have problems like that. Maybe now it's Nibiru and it's this great big massive huge problem to try and figure out whether this is real or not, but you have other problems, even little things like I don't know, you've got to solve these problems, of course, but it's when it becomes your huge priority of your life that I have to solve these problems, and we forget about all the good things that are going on in your life, and all the things you can enjoy and things that are going well. But anyway, have a look at Ringu Tulku's video. He explains it properly, and so I'll just end with that. To have a look at his video if you're getting depressed by all the problems that you see in the world, because there are lots of good things going on as well.